Gentleman Shenandoah, Mr. Gilbert.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Rise for a point of personal privilege.
May proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen, I thank the gentleman from Charlottesville. We are certainly excited about getting off to a good start to a productive session. Likewise, I heard the governor's speech last night. I heard many of the lofty ambitions and goals that the governor laid out in sort of big, sweeping terms, without any real indication of how he would pay for many of those things. I think when the gentleman from Charlottesville says we're going to have to come up with the resources to make that happen, I think that might be code for something. And if folks want to just get down to the business of talking about how we need to raise taxes to make all these big sweeping things take place, then that should be the agenda that the governor lays out and that the other side of the aisle lays out. And stop, maybe hiding the ball. If there are all these big things that we as government are supposed to be doing that the governor wants to do and he intends to pay for that, I suppose he needs to tell us how he intends to do that. Mr. Speaker, so I heard some of those things. I also heard some very tired rhetoric in the governor's remarks last night. That tired rhetoric, I guess, centers around his continuing desire and ambition to further expand a very expensive, unwieldy, fraud-ridden, waste-ridden government program without any real notion of how to pay for it for the long term. He talks about all this money that's going to come in that we're going to end up relying upon, and then lo and behold, as we've said throughout, we feel very confident that the federal government is going to pull the rug out from under Virginia and leave the taxpayers holding the bag. So that tired rhetoric was repeated yet again last night without any real plan of how we would pay for that expansion of that program 10 years from now. And then I also heard a lot of empty rhetoric, quite frankly. We heard the governor pandering to our state employees, talking about how deserving they were, and many of them are deserving of better pay, depending on what they do. But the governor said, in very sweeping terms, that all of our state employees deserve a raise. And he said in the same breath that he did not want us to cut anything else to pay for that. And that struck me as just the emptiest of all rhetoric, that he would propose giving our state employees a raise, many of whom have not had a raise in a while, and it is a legitimate discussion to be had. But to say do that and don't cut anything else, again, just sort of, I guess, reinforces the tone that's been set around here from the governor's office since the governor took office, which is that I'm gonna do things my way. I don't really want to work with you. I'm asking you to do this thing, but don't you dare do these other things to pay for it. Somebody counted the number of times the governor used the word I or me last night in his speech, and it was 64 times. And I think that's indicative of kind of his approach, that I know we are a nuisance and a bother to him, and he would just as soon go ahead and do what he wants. If he indeed intends to work with us on an agenda, we would hope that he would continue to do that in some of the more constructive ways that he's put forth, and sort of abandon these other tired, empty, rhetorical moments where he falls back to things that are either clearly not going to happen or that are impossible because of the way he lays it out. Paying for a pay increase for everybody when you won't find the money anywhere else. Again, if he wants to raise taxes and that's his intention, please tell us that in your speech. But we didn't hear that either. So, Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen, I would just ask the governor and those working with him to please focus on the things that we can work with him on, try to make his term more productive, try to make our time here more productive. On that same note, about a third of what I heard last night was about things that were not productive, that were totally divisive. Some of the governor's comments were expressly dismissive of the very real, deep, meaningful belief systems of about half the people in the Commonwealth of Virginia. And he sort of referred to those dismissively as throwback ideologies. And I don't know exactly his quote, but he dismissed about half of Virginia as sort of being not with it, and pesky people who believe in things related to their morality or their belief systems or their personal freedoms, for that matter. That's not going to get us to a productive session. It's not going to get us to a productive 4 years in office. And so if this is all going to be about rhetoric, then he can just keep doing that. But if he wants to be productive and get some things done, things that we can work on, to grow our economy, to work on jobs, to help improve our education system. We've laid out a pretty broad agenda of actually governing this state, and not on rhetoric, but trying to improve our K through 12 education system, trying to improve the affordability of higher education. We have a real agenda, and when we lay out our agenda, we follow it up with ways to pay for it. I'm not getting that from the third floor, and Mr. Speaker, I would just hope that going forward that we can have more concrete and productive discussions about ways we can work together and not ways we can continue to divide the people of Virginia. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Yeah.